Hello, podcast fam. I am thrilled to share some exciting news. My book, So Grow Lead, is officially live on Amazon. This book is more than just my story of starting a nonprofit and building a peanut butter factory in Malawi. So trust me, the ups and downs of that journey are worth the read. It's also packed with practical strategies to help nonprofit leaders like you tackle challenges with clarity, courage, and a whole lot of heart. If you've ever wondered how to turn your vision into reality, navigate the inevitable hurdles, and build something meaningful, whether in your organization or in your own life, this book is for you. I'd be so grateful for your support in spreading the word. Grab your copy of So Grow Lead in the show notes and on Amazon today. Let's keep sowing seeds of impact together. Welcome to the Lead with Heart podcast, which is dedicated to nonprofit leaders who are passionate about making a difference. I'm your host, Haley Cooper, and I'm thrilled to have you join us on a journey of growth, inspiration, and transformation. At Lead with Heart, we believe that leading with heart means embracing empathy, compassion, and authenticity in every aspect of our work. It's about putting people first, fostering genuine connections, and creating a positive impact that goes beyond numbers and metrics. In the nonprofit world, it can often feel like we're carrying the weight of the world on our shoulders. The challenges are immense and the road can be lonely. But here, you're not alone. This podcast is a community where we support each other, share our stories, and learn together. Each episode will dive into personal and professional development topics tailored specifically for nonprofit leaders. From innovative fundraising strategies and effective team management to self-care practices and leadership insights, we're here to provide you with practical strategies that you can apply to your life and work. My goal is to empower you, elevate your leadership, and engage your heart in all that you do. I want to help you navigate the unique challenges of the nonprofit sector with confidence and resilience, so you can continue to create meaningful change in the world. So whether you're driving to a meeting, taking a break, or winding down for the day, tune in and join us on this journey. Together, we'll discover what it truly means to lead with heart. Thank you for being here. Let's dive in. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Lead with Heart podcast. This is your host, Haley Cooper, and I am so excited today to have LaMichelle on the podcast. She is the owner and CEO of Overhead Solutions Group, a CPA firm specializing in accounting, assurance, and tax services for nonprofit organizations. She has over 9 years of experience. She is a trusted advisor dedicated to excellence and passionate about helping clients achieve their financial goals. Well, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me.
And for listeners, this is going to be a fun and exciting conversation about all things finance and accounting. So stay tuned, listen through the episode because it is something that is such an important topic that a lot of people do not understand. So that is why I wanted to bring this conversation to the podcast today. So before we dive in deep to all things finance and accounting, can you tell me a little bit more about you and your background and what led you to start the Overhead Solutions Group?
Yeah, so I am a CPA. I'm an accountant full-time. What I do is I run a business called Overhead Solutions Group. I have about 5 on my team. Like you mentioned, our main niche is nonprofit. So we focus on assurance services, tax, accounting services. I've been in business almost 4 years. Before that, I worked at other accounting firms, and starting my own business has always been something I wanted to do. The name of my business, Overhead Solutions Group. We had a group project when I was getting my MBA, and one of the group projects was starting a business. And that's the business I started, was Overhead Solutions Group, the business I have now. I didn't start it till maybe about 3 years after I finished my MBA, but that's how I originally started it. And then the pandemic hit, and I was just working a lot of hours. And I just kind of wanted to step back. I got pregnant. So then I decided to start my own business. And that's where I am now.
Well, thank you so much. And congratulations on the baby. I think I see her behind you. So cute. So yeah, tell me a little bit more about Overhead Solutions Group. What does it do? What does it focus on? What do you do as the CEO and owner? What's your passion for this group?
Okay, yeah. So we mainly do accounting services for nonprofits, but my main passion is having nonprofits thrive. Like, I don't want to just be your accountant. I don't want to just see everything when it's over and type in the numbers. I want to help you grow and help you stay compliant. The good thing about me is I started off as an auditor in my career, so I've seen everything. I've seen grant applications. I've seen what the compliance look like. I know what funders want. So lots of times I'm able to walk with my clients and talk to them about what they need. And I'm very passionate about helping them grow. So if you're working with me, you should continue to grow and continue to have a better cash flow situation. That is my biggest passion, is helping them so they can focus on their mission and not have to lose sleep at night worrying about if they're going to make payroll or if they're going to have findings on their audit. I'm really there to try to help them financially get to a good place, which a lot of people don't realize. Your mission is important, but finances are really like the backbone. It's really, really, really hard. I would say impossible to have a successful nonprofit if your finances aren't well.
I would double tap that as well. I think that is an important, like, the sustainability of your organization is so important, and being able to pay your people as well. So I think many nonprofits struggle with understanding the complexities of financial compliance. What are some common financial pitfalls among nonprofit organizations, and how do you help them navigate these challenges?
I would say the number one pitfall I see is tracking. That is the number one pitfall. Of course, on the other end is getting money, but by tracking, I mean, if you spend money, have the receipt to support it, make sure it's in a software, whether it's QuickBooks, Sage, whatever, an accounting software. And one thing, because I would say a lot of the findings I see with grants and things like that is because lack of documentation. And I always tell my clients the easiest way is sometimes it's big organizations. They have a lot of volunteers, a lot of staff, maybe even part-time staff. So it's a lot of receipts. And usually it's not the executive director, or those aren't usually the people losing receipts. It's usually the volunteers and people like that aren't necessarily vested in the finances of the organization. So one big thing I suggest is if people have a phone or anything, create a share folder, whether it's in OneDrive, Google Drive, whatever. And then whenever people purchase stuff, they immediately take a picture with their phone and just drop it in that folder. So that's one way they can help with compliance and help keeping all their receipts and documentation in one central place. Of course, you have to go and organize it and things like that. But I think that's the easiest way to do it. And then make sure that information is flowed to the accountant. And I would say now almost all accounting softwares let you attach support. So then when you're going in there doing the monthly reconciliations and transactions, you're attaching it directly to the transaction. So if something comes back later and someone's questioning it or a grantor's coming, you already know where it is. And you don't have to worry about hunting someone down and try to find it or figuring out whose Amazon account it came from and having them log in to print it. It's already there and you're ready to go.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's important to know about those softwares and have that rigorous tracking program. And what is the board's responsibility in all of this? Obviously, you talked about staff, but what is the board's role in the financial responsibility of the organization, and how can they put in proactive measures to make sure that the organization is doing what they say they're going to do with the money, but being good stewards of it as well?
Well, I think it depends on the size of the organization, where some organizations, they're a little bit smaller. So the board is very hands-on. Like some organizations, the treasurer of the board is like some organizations, I'm the treasurer of the board. I'm doing everything on a volunteer basis, their books, their tax return. And then some bigger organizations, the treasurer of the board or, other board members, they aren't really doing a part of the day-to-day transactions and things like that. So I would say a bigger organization, the board should really be overseeing like governance. They really shouldn't be in the day-to-day, everyday transactions. They should help with decisions. I say one big part of the board is fundraising. I believe the board should be helping with fundraising, should tell everyone about your organization and helping your organization grow. And with compliance, when you have the board meetings, you should be talking about the grants. This is where we are in this grant. This is how much we spent. This is how much we have left. And you should be showing them reports. Like they shouldn't be the ones putting the reports and things together, but they should at least be able to read the reports and know what's going on within the organization. I would that's perfect for any size organization, but I know sometimes the smaller ones, it's impossible for the board to be completely separate when it's all volunteer ran. All nonprofits can afford to hire people to do everything.
Yeah. And something that we were talking about as you're talking about financial reporting when we were off camera was this idea of auditing. And I'm here in California. And like you said, if you're under $1 million, you don't necessarily have to have an audited financial statement, but a lot of foundations ask for them. And so how do you navigate that within an organization? How do you tell your clients we said it can be expensive to get an audited financial. So how do you navigate that conversation as a former auditor, but also to coach your clients to execute one?
Yeah. So one thing is I'm a former auditor, but I'm also a current auditor. So for my clients, I do a mix. Either I do the audit or I can prepare you for the audit. For independence reasons, I can't prepare you and do the audit. And one thing is, just like we discussed before the call, is sometimes when you apply and the funders require an audit, I say reach out to the funder, because some funders are willing to accept a step down in services. So by step down, I mean, instead of an audit, you can get a review, or instead of a review, you can get a compilation. So that's one thing I would do, is just ask and see what they say. And if they won't, I would say get the audit. And I think audits are good to have anyway for the organization, because that helps you stay compliant. And funders really, really like to see audits. Mm-hmm. And one thing that you can do to help, because audits are very expensive, is 9 times out of 10, you can write the audit in your grants, in your grant budgets, especially with government grants. The government will definitely let you write your audit in there. But even private funders, some private funders will give you unrestricted funds. But, if it's restricted and you have to do a budget and you have to turn in forms to voucher, by vouchering, I mean turning in receipts to get reimbursed, a lot of them will allow you to put things like the cost of your audit in that grant budget. And that grant can cover it, so you don't have to worry about finding the funds to pay for your audit.
Yeah, I think that's so important to have those conversations with your funders. And I love that perspective. What are some of the key strategies, I guess, when it comes to audited financial statements? What are some of the things that you look out for or that need to be included?
So I would say the number one thing with audited financial statements is what you give them agrees to what's in your trial balance. So for example, if on your trial balance, you have $30,000 in fixed assets, when you give them an invoice, the invoice needs to agree and say $30,000. So I think the most important thing about audited financial statements is making sure the things on your balance sheet can be supported. If you say you have $1 million in the bank, you need to have a bank statement that says that, or a bank reconciliation to support it. I think that's what's most important. And of course, outside of the balance sheet, revenue recognition is very important. Revenue recognition, I mean, when you have money or going to receive money, is it recorded appropriately? I think those are the two biggest things in an audit. And that's how you can prepare, is just making sure, okay, everything that's listed in here actually occurs and actually exists.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And you talked about receiving the money and tracking it accurately. And a little bit before that, you talked about this idea of unrestricted and restricted funds. So can you talk a little bit more about what that looks like and how nonprofits can track that money efficiently and obviously spend it in the right way?
So first, I think I'm going to step back and talk about what's restricted versus unrestricted. If someone just, or a funder or anyone donated $10,000, you could do whatever you want to it as long as it's within your mission. That's unrestricted. It's unrestricted to your organization. Restricted is when you have to spend it on specific things. So let's say you're a nonprofit that offers various services, but they say, okay, here's $10,000. You could only spend this $10,000 on a program for school supplies for middle school kids, right? So then those funds are restricted for that, and you can only spend it on that. So a great way to track it, I would say, is classes or departments in your accounting software. So, whatever the name of the grant is, let's say, I don't know, the grant is 123 grant. And there, make sure you have a class for 123 grant. And when you get the funding for that grant, you label everything in there with that class in your accounting software. And then any expenses you spend for that, you label it with that. Then you can easily run a report to show, okay, this is how much I spent. This is how much I have left, or I spent all of it. I think that's the easiest way to track it when it comes to restricted versus unrestricted, is just using what, the majority of softwares provide.
Yeah, I love that. And I think financial planning is so important for nonprofits. And I've seen some do it really well. I've seen other ones not do it so well, where It comes down to planning the budget, and it's, we're going to raise this by 20% and we need to raise X amount in 12 months. But when you uncover it a little bit, you're like, where did that number come from? Like, why did 10%, why did 20% sound like a good one? But there's no financial history that has been reviewed or financial planning to be able to realize that number. So I would love to get your input on, like, how do you approach strategic financial planning to ensure organizations, one, set their budgets realistically, but also remain financially healthy while staying true to their mission?
Well, a few things. One, when it comes to your budget, like you said, it being realistic, I would say you need to have an actual plan. Don't say, oh, I want to go about 20%. What does that even mean? Does 20% mean I need 10 people to give me $1,000 each? 100 people to give me $10? You know, like, what does that look like? I think sometimes budgets are too big picture, at least when people originally put together, and they don't think about the granular level of how they're going to hit those goals, right? So if you want to hit that goal, what grants are you applying for? And, you know, what success rate do you expect to have? So I expect to apply for $1 million worth of grants. I expect my success rate for me to only get 50,000. And that's how I'm going to hit that goal. And I like what you said about being realistic. I think that's the best way to be realistic. What can you realistically do? If you had $500,000 last year, that's the amount of money you've received, period. That's the actual, not the budget, the actual money. And you're saying you want to get 750 this year. Do you have the capacity to put in the extra work to get to that 750? Because you can't do the same stuff you were doing at $500,000 to get to $750,000. And not only that, was the $500,000 a fluke? Was it a one-time grant for $300,000 that you may not even get again? So you need to have accurate planning, because I know some grants are really multi-year grants. You know, you're probably going to get it year after year after year. So I think first you need to keep in consideration, what am I going to get for sure? That should be your baseline of your grant. Because, you know, a lot of grants are multi-year or automatically renewing. And then after that, what do I have time to pursue? If I don't have time to knock on doors, to go to events, to apply for additional grants, then I realistically shouldn't be raising my budget, because sometimes it could really, you know, hurt your spirit if your goal was 750 and you hit nowhere near it. When really, if you hit something realistic, it'll really get you motivated to get it done and help you feel accomplished in your mission.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's so important too on the fundraiser side as well. That's my background. And I think you have to set those realistic expectations for the fundraiser. It's a high pressure job where you have to raise dollars. And obviously that's not the only metric that you're tracked by, but it's having that understanding of the ebbs and flows of fundraising and setting those realistic expectations so that you can empower your fundraising team and your board to be able to maintain that fiscal responsibility for the organization. So I'm so excited that we're having this conversation, because I think there are a lot of misconceptions about accounting and tax compliance. I would love to know, what have you found are the biggest misconceptions, and what steps can people take to become more informed and proactive? Imagine a fundraising partner that not only helps you raise more money, but also supports you in retaining your donors. A partner that helps you raise funds both online and on location, so you can grow your impact faster. That's DonorBox, a comprehensive suite of tools, services, and resources that give fundraisers just like you a custom solution to tackle your unique challenges, helping you achieve the growth and sustainability your organization needs, helping you help others. Visit donorbox.org to learn more.
I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that anybody can be an accountant. At least right now with a lot of the marketing with certain softwares and things, they say, like, you could be your own bookkeeper. And I think that's been the biggest gap I've seen is, you know, people try to, at the end of the day, if you're an executive director, you're running a nonprofit and you're not, you know, trained or understand accounting, you probably shouldn't be managing the books, not just even from a knowledge standpoint, just for controls. Like, you have to have certain controls in a nonprofit where one person shouldn't be doing everything. So I think people in organizations should really focus on creating a budget where they can include an accountant in there to make sure their books are right. But not only should an accountant be able to help with your books, they should be able to help you in that financial plan and see, okay, this is what you're doing that's working. This is what you're doing that may not be working or may not have the best impact. Because like you said, dollars isn't the only thing that's important. What is our impact? Did we reach 100 students? Did we reach 100,000 students? To really see like how it works and how you can do it. So I think people should invest in accountants and invest in accounting software. No nonprofit should be using Excel. And I know accounting software can be very expensive, but there are options. I know you probably heard of it, but they have something like TechSoup. So something like TechSoup, you can get the highest level of QuickBooks for like maybe 200 max a year, where the normal plan would be 200 a month. You're only paying that a year, which I believe most nonprofits can, get to, or $100 a year if you get a lower plan. So like there are options out there for nonprofits to have the appropriate software to do their accounting that won't necessarily break the bank.
Yeah, I love that. And thank you for sharing that resource. So maybe there's like a small nonprofit listening to this and they're like, when do we bring someone in-house and when do we hire a consultant to manage the books? Can you talk a little bit more about the benefits of having both and when it's time to bring someone in-house and when it's time to just hire someone out to do the work because you need someone to be tracking the financials?
Yeah, I think in the beginning, it's good to have an outsourced person and not really hire someone in directly. Now, unless sometimes our air grants where you need to have an internal accountant and the grant is going to pay the salary of that accountant. If that's the case, please follow your grant and get that accountant in-house. But I believe most nonprofits, especially in most states in the US, once you're over $500,000, you're going to have at least two accountants because you're going to have an independent CPA to do your audit. And then you're going to have another CPA, whether they're internal in your organization or a consultant. But I believe, when it gets to a point where transactions need to be tracked daily, you're managing multiple grants. I would say, you have $500,000 in revenue. At that point, you should probably, even if you're not bringing in an accounting manager or CFO, at least bring in an internal bookkeeper or staff accountant to help with the books. And at that point, I don't even think you necessarily need to get rid of your external accountant, but you should at least have an internal person to help with the inflow of data and information. Because lots of times consultants like us or external accountants aren't there every single day and we don't know all the details. And sometimes if you have a huge influx of transactions, it can be hard to keep track of everything. And as you grow, a lot of these grants, you can write in a budget to pay for an internal staff accountant, bookkeeper, accounting manager within your organization.
Yes. Again, making the ask. I love that. And thank you for that distinction. And we were talking about financial planning and budgeting a little bit before. And I feel like a lot of nonprofits, at least in my own experience, maybe you've seen different, operate in silos where there's only certain people in the room, but they're not the ones necessarily responsible for executing the budget. So can you talk about how do you coach your clients on who should be in the room when they're planning the budget? And then how do they bridge the gap between departments, between the board to make sure everyone is accountable and, again, become the fiduciary responsibility for the organization?
Honestly, I believe everyone in the organization has a fiduciary for responsibility, whether you're the intern all the way up to the chairman of the board. I believe when people put their budget together, they should, at minimum, share the budget with everyone on their team and discuss it. I think they should have a meeting and discussing it. Some organizations are huge, thousands of people. It's not possible to have one meeting with everyone and discuss it. But at minimum, talking to the heads of each department, explaining what the budget is, what the process is. Because some people aren't focused or fluent in money. So sometimes you need to really explain to them what's going on, what the goal of the organization is. Because sometimes people are working, they don't understand the goal. They don't understand what dollars are coming in. So sometimes if money isn't being spent well or in an efficient manner, they just simply don't know. They don't know what they can or can't spend money on. And that's why I think it's great to share the budget with everybody so everyone can understand what your organization is doing. And not just that, you never know who somebody knows. Like I said, from the intern to the chairman, they may see levels of your budget and say, oh, I didn't realize we offered this service, or this is something we do. I may know this person who can help you with funding, or I may know this individual who needs help that the organization offers.
Oh, yeah. I love that you said that every single person in the organization is responsible for the fiduciary responsibility. What advice would you give to a nonprofit leader looking to build a strong financial foundation for their organization, especially maybe if they're just starting out or they're experiencing rapid growth?
this is probably cliche, but know your numbers. You should know the nonprofit is still a business, right? If you're losing money, you're going to close. So you should know what the money's doing, where it's going, if you're having a net loss, if you're breaking even, or if you have a gain every year. I think that's the first step, is just to have the bare bones books together. And then after that, you can make a realistic goal for growth, or as you continue to grow, or even a realistic goal to get started. But I think it's always best to have a great foundation, have everything set up, your bank accounts, a separate bank account that's not in your personal name. In order to get that, you'd have to apply with the IRS to get your 501c3, apply with the state to get incorporated as a nonprofit, because you need that paperwork to bring to a bank to open a bank account. But first, you need to have your own bank account and make sure it's linked to an accounting software and keeping track of everything.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And what are some critical controls that nonprofits can put in place? I know obviously having a double signature on a check or not having the same person receiving the money, like what are some controls that you coach your clients, maybe like the top 5 controls that they could have in place? Obviously, there's a lot more, but that are essential for them to maintain that financial responsibility.
I would say one thing is, I know people don't use a lot of cash as much, but I have plenty of clients who still have fundraisers where people donate cash and things of that nature. Always have at least 2 people with the cash at all times, both of the people counting it and depositing it. Another thing is, I would say that the people who are counting and depositing it shouldn't necessarily be the same people recording it. So I would suggest, if you're having an event, maybe have people from 2 different departments work together to count those funds. Another thing I would suggest is doing the bank reconciliation. The person who's doing the bank reconciliations every month, and having an additional person, the person reviewing it should probably be in the accounting department, or like the executive director or the treasurer of the board. And I would say like all purchases over a certain amount needs multiple level of signatures. I believe we don't need 2 signatures on everything. Like, if you run a nonprofit, you're doing an after school program and you're buying food every day, you don't want to have to get signatures to buy a burger at McDonald's, right? So I would say having that, but then having someone have a pre-approval process. Like, okay, this person, anything under $50, they can purchase without a manager. This manager, anything over that. So I think that's the controls in place to have certain levels of what you can spend. And then on the back end, having someone look at the historical data and review it and make sure it makes sense. Not only makes sense to what was purchased, but makes sense to what the rules are within the organization.
Ooh, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. And you recently completed the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Program, which is a very notable achievement. Can you share some key insights you gained from that experience and how it has influenced the direction of your company?
Yeah, I think the biggest impact, which may seem like the silliest thing, is processes. How I can explain something, but it may not be the way someone hears it. So for example, as you may know, the Goldman Sachs program, you do a different topic every week. And every week when you do that topic, they have an expert coach help you in that. So they had, the one week was about processes and making sure everyone knows their task and what they should do. And we all got this subject where we wrote up the steps to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And we had a lot of assumptions, right? They should know this, they should know that. So some teams did it and they put every little detail. And then other people did it, they left out obvious, like, open up the jar of peanut butter, open up the jar. And it helped me to notice like communication. Like sometimes what you say is not necessarily what your staff hears. So you may assume your staff understand things. And I think that can help a business or nonprofit with staff is make clear and concise directions, and things that may seem obvious to you, write it down. Write it down in a procedure, explain it to them directly so they know how to do it. That's really helped my perspective, I think, with a lot of the staff that works within an organization, which I know that may not have been what you expected, but I think that had the biggest impact on me, because I think your staff is like the backbone. And if you have a good staff that supports the business and believes in the business and knows you believe in them, I think it's unstoppable what either your nonprofit or your for-profit can do.
Ooh, that's so good. And I think it like wraps back around to the conversation that we're having about finances, right? Communication and transparency is key, and having those clear lines of communication when it comes to your finances. So I love that you tied that all back together. You obviously have a lot of professional affiliations that you're a part of, such as the National Association of Black Accountants and Chicago Financial Women. How have these networks impacted your professional journey? And what advice would you give to young professionals looking to build their own networks?
Yes, networks are very important. And it was not only the backbone of my business, but it was the backbone of my professional life before I even started my own business. So the National Association of Black Accountants, especially for young people, they have a lot of great programs. They offer scholarships. They have a program for kids in high school called the ACAP program, where you can go and stay on the college campus for a week free. And you go to classes and everything as if you were an accountant student. They take you to accounting businesses to see offices. And they also have a great network where they have great networking events where you can meet other people. So for me as a business, I love going to these networking events because I can meet people, who could work for me as staff, but then I can meet people who could introduce me to other clients. And one group you didn't mention that I'm a part of is the Illinois CPA Society. My actual biggest client I have right now, I got through keeping up relationships with the Illinois CPA Society. So they have this women mentoring group where it's about 10 women. They randomly select 10 women to be together in a group. And I had joined the group maybe back in 2019. And even though I live in Virginia now, I'm from Chicago. I haven't lived here very long. So I was in that group for years until I left Chicago in 2023. So 2019 to 2023, I was in a group. The purpose, we just connected, talked about our jobs, talked about our lives, where we were, what our goals were. We would help each other out. Some of them, like me, were one of the younger women. Some of the older women would give me advice on what to do in my career. And I got it that way. One of the women in one of our dinners, because we would get dinner once a quarter, we would all get together, get dinner or a drink. She was saying, oh, hey, I have this client. Their books need a lot of help, but I can't really do anything because I'm their auditor. So I need to be independent. And I was like, hey, I started a business. Could I potentially talk to the client? Because it was a nonprofit. I do have a lot of experience and I can help them. So sometimes, having networks in the beginning isn't always about what can someone get from me? What can you give me? Sometimes it's all about just creating a connection, genuinely caring about other people and what's going on in their life. And I believe good things can come from it. And I think networks are very, very important.
Yes, I love that. And it's been a critical part of my career and now my own entrepreneurship journey. I think building those relationships are really important for you to not only generate future clients, but also have those people to brainstorm with. I'm able to call people and be like, I'm so in this. I'm stuck in my head. Why? I've done this a million times. Why can't I think about it? And then that person's able to flip the switch, right? Or you're going to see people at events and it just brings words to your heart that people are in it with you because it's hard work and we need people in our corner. Is there any other advice that you would give to our listeners as it pertains to finance, accounting, or compliance?
People don't believe in your mission unless you believe in your mission. I truly believe that. When you are applying for grants, if you cannot visualize and see yourself in that grant, I believe you're less likely to get it because it's going to influence the way you write the grant and the budget you put together for it. So I believe if you're going to do it, lean completely in and put your all into it. Or to me, just don't do it at all because you won't survive. And another thing I want to say is, of course, one more thing I want to mention is we all, just piggybacking off the networking thing we talked about before, we all have special skills to offer each other. And one thing I'm starting to notice is a lot of people are quick to charge. So for example, I'm a CPA and I'm in groups of CPAs or some CPAs, they don't want to talk to other CPAs about how their business is going unless they pay them, right? And I think sometimes it's good to just develop relationships and not always develop relationships to get money, or every conversation doesn't have to be a sales pitch. Every conversation does not have to be a sales pitch. You could talk to people just for the purpose of talking to people, and you never know what they're going to bring. And sometimes that person isn't the one to bring it to you, but they can introduce you to that person. So sometimes I understand you're in this nonprofit, you're stressed, you need to make a lot of money, but sometimes you have to be careful. Like I say, always make the ask, of course, but whether they say yes or no, you should continue the relationship and not end the relationship just because they're not necessarily buying what you're selling, because you never know how it can blow yours.
Ooh, I love that so much. Such a great way to end. Where can people find you and learn more about you and the work that you do?
I'm Overhead Solutions Group really everywhere. My website, overheadsolutionsgroup.com, where I have a free ebook for nonprofits and their finances. You can find that right on my website. I'm also every social media you can think of, I'm on there. I have TikTok videos, many TikTok videos. I'm on Instagram, all Overhead Solutions, or you can look me up, LaMichelle Hecht CPA. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn. I even have a few YouTube long form videos. I only have 2 or 3. I hope to expand that more in the future. But like I say, any social media, you should be able to find me. Either look up LaMichelle Hecht CPA. Most people don't have my name, or look up Overhead Solutions Group CPA. You'll find me.
Well, we will make sure to link to all that in the show notes and link to your ebook as well. Thank you so much for this conversation. I have surely learned so much, and I know our listeners will find value in this. It is such an important conversation that we need to have. So thank you so much for bringing your insight and your expertise.
Thank you. I enjoyed this.
If you have valued these stories or learned something from what you've heard, please share this podcast episode or follow me on LinkedIn. Thank you so much for your support, and together we can build a better community and world.